the last few weeks, the last few months, the last year. And hopefully you've been checking in with people and hearing some of that. Some of those updates have happened on prayer meeting. We heard about the needs in our own backyard. So Carter a few weeks ago was telling us about Gate 316 and the needs that are right here. Joel goes downtown most Sunday afternoons and he's sharing the gospel. We have people who are visiting. I saw Steve having a conversation with someone who was asking about Steve Curon having a conversation this morning with someone who was asking about our service times and what's happening. There are needs right here, right now, that we can meet. We're also praying for missionaries, right? Because God is working on a large global scale. And so there's Alpha happening this summer. There's Bible studies. There's CNC. There's people going to camp. And this is just one more thing that we're hoping to do in 2 weeks on a Monday.
How many of us were alive and young people in the 1970s? Not to out yourself entirely as far as age is concerned, but I see a few hands. Okay. And how many of us have heard the term Jesus people or Jesus freaks? Do we know a little bit about that movement? Okay. One final question. How many of us have seen the movie The Jesus Revolution? Okay. Fewer hands. But that was a movie that was in theaters briefly about a month or so ago and talked about this movement that happened in the 1970s. We had the hippies kind of in North America. We usually talk about those who were in the United States, but it happened in Canada as well, who began turning to the Lord in droves. They were seeking the truth in seemingly all the wrong places and were saved and converted. I happen to know someone, a speaker from Nova Scotia, who that was his conversion story. Traveling across Canada, working on fruit farms, doing a lot of things he shouldn't have been doing, and came to Christ. He is able to come and visit our chapel 2 Monday evenings from now and share his testimony. So when I ran this idea past the elders, they thought it would be a great time for us to come out, invite friends, invite neighbors, possibly spread this out to other chapels and invite them to come out for this evening as well, hear the speaker's testimony, and spend time together that evening.
So on a Monday evening, as a group of guys, every 2 weeks, we've been getting together at Doug's. So there's about 12 guys that know they have their Mondays free 2 weeks from now. But those of you who are in teenagers, we'd invite you to ask those that you know to come out. Because it was most of you who put your hands up, that you were young people during that era. The other CNC that are here, we're not dealing with very different situations. The world is still the world, and the conversations that we have with the basketball guys, the guys at CNC, the guys at work, the people at university, come be encouraged, challenged, and maybe bring someone along who could be challenged, encouraged by the work, the power of the gospel. This is something that would be awesome for all of us to be a part of and to be at. And I think what's really important for us to be praying about is that the first Alpha night will have happened the Thursday right before this. Go Alpha, I think Sunday school picnic, and then this Monday night. There's so much opportunity for us to invite people into what is happening here. So please praying about all of those things and the opportunities and people in your own lives that you could be investing in, because it's not us who does the work, it's God. And that's the end of every testimony. It doesn't matter what the testimony looks like, sounds like, young, old, God does the work in ways that we normally can't imagine.
Okay, let's go to the Lord in prayer and ask for his blessing on us. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the power that we have in you. We thank you for being here with us at Roslyn Ridge. We thank you for seeing a blessing here and a fire under us. And that only comes from you. And so we think of all these things that have been happening, and it's a busy time. But Lord, we thank you for that. We thank you so much that you've made it busy for us, and that we're working for you. And as a group here, as a body, And Lord, we thank you so much for each and every one that's here. We just pray now, Lord, that you'd watch over us as we move into the second part of this meeting, Lord. It's great to have Dave and Carrie here with us, Lord, and we just ask that you be with them and be with Dave as he brings this report from Zambia and also looking into God's Word as well. And so we're excited to hear about how you are using them for your service and your glory. So again, we just give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so he's asked for a lot of time this morning. We haven't given him a lot. We had started a little bit later, so he's going to go on a little bit later because I think you're going to enjoy what's going to be coming this morning. And I know I am excited about it. Dave Wagler is a good friend of mine, and Carrie as well. Dave and I grew up together and did some different things, some wild things, which I'm not going to get into. But we've been longtime friends. You've got a bottle of water in your hand. It was given out to you at the start. Maybe you didn't like it or didn't want it, that's fine. But whoever did receive a bottle of water, it's for a little bit of an object lesson. It's not a big one. But how often do we take one of these on a regular basis in a day? I take maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 sometimes in a day. It's a very easy way of taking a glass of water with you when you go somewhere, right? But how often do you take a nice, clean bottle of, well, we think it's spring water. Hopefully it is. And we take it and we put it in the car. You take a few sips because you're thirsty. You take a few sips and then it goes in your cup holder. Then you go somewhere, you go grocery shopping somewhere else, and all of a sudden you come back, oh, it's a little bit warm. Well, I don't want warm water. That's not very nice. So it just sits there. And then when you get back to the house, you take it and you don't want to leave it in your car, so you just dump it on the driveway or maybe on your grass because you want to water the grass, right? And so you do that and you think nothing of it. We take this for granted, don't we? Clean water. Something we've always had. But for some people, it's something that they have never had. Something that they've never seen. They look at that and go, what is that? Clean water? We're going to hear about some folks that are on to give water, clean water. But not just clean water, living water. Living water that comes from the Lord. And so we're excited to have Dave come up and give his report. And so it's all yours, Dave.
Good morning. Thanks, Dave, and thank you again for the opportunity to be here this morning. Water, it is essential. We all need it, and it's indeed a privilege to be able to go over to Zambia and be a part of a mission probably that my father had started. He had a vision, I guess, I think it was about 27 years ago. For many of you would know my dad, Ken Wagler. He's been here before, I believe, and he's still going over to Zambia, and what is he, 79, I think it is, and still goes over faithfully every year, sometimes twice a year. But a little bit of an introduction. Carrie and I, we have 4 adult children, aging from 28 down to 20, and we live near Stratford, Ontario. Born and raised on a farm boy at heart. You can take the boy out of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy, and that's so true. I can't get agriculture, I can't get farming out of my blood. That's all I think about, but we are no longer farming, actually. We sold the farm a few years back. We went through some difficult years. Farming is big business, and it's a tough business, but the Lord really began to do a work. He had to do a work in my heart. I'm going to say 10 years ago, I was in a point in my life where I wasn't really living my life completely devoted to God and His Son. And He had to do a work. And sometimes there's many distractions in our lives. And the farm was that for me. It was my God. It was number one. It took all of my time. It took over my marriage and my relationship with my children, and God had to begin to do a work, and to the point where we ended up having to sell the farm because we were in a tough position financially and were forced to sell, and that was tough. That was very tough for me because Farming was my identity. We all, for some, we all want to be identified with something. We want to have a purpose in life, and for me, it was the farm. I wanted to be a well-to-do farmer. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it became my God. I put it before everything in my life. So after the farm had sold, who am I? What's my identity? I couldn't identify as a farmer. I was so proud to say I was a farmer, but I was a proud farmer. And God had to take that out of my life to begin to mold and shape me. Ephesians 2:10, and I really like in the NLT version, we would know it as we are God's workmanship, but in the NLT it says we are God's masterpiece. What's a masterpiece? It's a person's finest piece of work. And that's how God looks at you and I as his children. So I envision myself as that ugly block of wood, chunk of wood that's got many rough edges to it. And God is taking his chisel and he's chiseling away all those rough, sharp edges. Why? To become like his son, Jesus Christ. But sometimes it hurts. He hits those spots, the sin in our life. Oh, yeah. It hurts sometimes. But as he's doing that, we have to be mindful there's a purpose to become like his son. Turning to the Bibles, just briefly, I want to just touch on a chapter here, Matthew chapter 14. Excuse me. Matthew 14. It's a very familiar passage for us all. Starting at verse 22. Just before this here scene takes place, Jesus has just finished providing enough food for the 5,000. And verse 22 will pick up immediately after this. Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. And after sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. And in their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I'm here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" I read this passage a while ago and I was wondering, what would make Peter think that he would even remotely have a chance of walking on water? Why? I mean, we know Peter's character. I think we've all heard enough studies and messages on Peter and his faith and lack of. Why would he say, "Allow me to come to you, Jesus, to walk on water"? Why not, "Jesus, come to the boat. Let me feel you. Let me touch you. Let me know that it's you." But instead, he got out of the boat. In our minds, we think of Peter leaving the boat, walking across water. There was a storm. There would have been waves. What would his footing have been like as he's going up and down over the waves as the waves are coming? We think in our heads he's just walking on water. No. He was trying to guide his footsteps, and as the wind began to roar and the waves got bigger, his faith got weaker. And that's so much like, I'm not going to point the finger at you guys, me. Life throws storms at us. All of us. Some of us, it's our health. Some of us, it's our marriage. Maybe we have a child who is not a believer, maybe profess salvation, but not living for him. We all have storms. We're all going to face them. Where do our eyes turn? Who do we turn to? Do we look within to try and figure things out? I know I'm guilty of that. When trials come, I so often just try and figure out how I'm going to fix my problems instead of bowing my knee and crying out to him for help. Life for us, for Carrie and myself, has been a challenge. What marriage isn't? But God is faithful, and it's been so amazing to see how he's led us to this country. Like I said, as a result of my dad going over to drill wells, I was able to go over for the first time in 2017, had the opportunity to take my third son, Tim, with me, and was that ever an eye-opening experience? It's such a different culture. God has used us with being able to provide clean drinking water every time we go into a village to drill a well. That gets our foot into a village. It opens the door up. The people, you're building a relationship as you've got the drill rig set up and there's everything roped off. Otherwise, they would be right on top of you, interested, curious. They've never seen anything like this before. So we put ropes up around to keep the people away. But you interact with them. You're building a friendship. You're building a relationship. If you have time, as the drill rig's going and somebody else can watch it, one of your workers can watch it, you can be off maybe playing some soccer. We were able to teach one village how to play football. They've never seen a football before. Trying to teach them how to throw overhand a football, that was fun. But it's all about relationships. Life is all about relationships, isn't it? We've been instructed, we've been told to go out. I'm just going to read the verses quickly. There's 6 things. You don't have to turn there. It's just in Matthew 25 where then the king, Matthew 25:34, then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." These are all things. All things. There's not one thing in that list of you and I cannot do. And we don't have to think too hard. I'm sure there's probably one of these things right now that you could think of, maybe a neighbor, maybe a family member, the unsaved. They are all around us, and there's things we can do to have an impact, to touch their lives. We're not all called to be missionaries to go across the world. We don't have to. We have them in our backyard. We have them in our communities around us. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job in that area. There's a lot of churches that are so focused with looking inward and not outward. And that's so true. And it hinders the work. There's much more going on. Yes, there's issues in the church. But we all have opportunity where we can be used. How can we help in any of these areas? You know your friend groups, you know the people that you work with. There's lives that we can touch. And just by offering 1 cup of water, a simple cup of water to a person, to the thirsty, can have an impact by showing love and genuine care for the person. I am not one to stand up here. I am not a preacher. I'm not a Bible teacher. Give me a well drilling rig or a shovel, and I can work alongside a person, build a relationship, build a friendship, and I can share my faith with that person. That's my gift. That's the way I work. So Carrie and I, we had the opportunity to go last year over to Zambia. Late September we left and came back, I think it was December the 2nd. So we had committed to going over for just over 2 months. My main work has been at Deepalada Mission. It's up in the northwest province of Zambia. Deepalada Mission was started in 1937. Maybe some of you guys have heard of Deepalada and know the history, and Chitokaloki Mission, Chavuma, Laloma. There's a great work going out there, all centered around medical work. So some of you, this might be repeat, but this mission station, Deepalada, was started in 1937 by James and Edith Geddes, who are from Northern Ireland. And it's just a small little clinic that they've got. This is Jeff and June Spicinger. Jeff's been serving out there on the mission field. He's from the States. He's been out there for 37 years, I believe. I think 11 years at Deepalada now. And pray for this couple. They're going through some deep waters. June has dementia. I was just talking to Mark yesterday, their son-in-law, who are also serving. That's Mark and Janelle. They're also serving alongside of Jeff and June at Deepalada also. I was talking to Mark yesterday, and June's getting to the point now with her dementia and everything. She's forgetting how to swallow even. So pray for June. Jeff, he was, I don't know if you folks know about Jeff. Last year he was driving down one of the highways in his Land Cruiser and hit a 14-year-old boy and killed him. He just 2 weeks ago was acquitted. So he had dash cam footage. It wasn't looking good for him. He's left with a huge bill from his lawyer now. So pray for Jeff, pray for June. I mean, these are all, these are real people with real problems, okay? Pray for them. They need our prayers. So yeah, Mark and Janelle, they've been serving out there at Deepalada now for 5 years. So it's nice for Jeff and June to have some help there in the mission station. I sat where they sat. I wanted to show this verse, part of the verse anyways, because this is a very important part of our ministry for Carrie and I. We want the local people. They're Lunda, the tribe that we work with are the Lunda tribe, and their culture is so different than ours. It's hard to understand, hard to figure out sometimes, but for them, again, to get to know you and to get to trust you, we wanted to spend as much time visiting with the local people, sitting with them, and do that and get them to trust us, to know that we care about them and their needs. Hopefully they would again start to open up with us. So that was a big part of our ministry, of sitting with the people. This is Oswald and Angela Kanyembi. Oswald is a local school teacher. He's really good with his English. So he was kind of my translator, and his wife Angela, she works up at the clinic, so Carrie got to spend a lot of time with Angela, and us two couples, we really hit it off, and Oswald's been a big part of our life. We talk probably once a week, if not every other week. So yeah, just anytime I could get out to the village, sit with the men, talk with the men. They're studying you all the time. They're studying aneurysms, and they have the younger generation has a better understanding of English and how to speak it, so that's always a challenge, but I would keep Oswald with me a lot of times, and I could go and he would translate for me. Opportunities out there. This is Mr. Kabambi. He's the head man of his village. He used to be one of the elders in the local assembly. He has about a 7-kilometer walk just to get to meeting on Sunday. His knees are shot. He can't walk anymore. He hadn't been to morning meeting for probably 8-9 months. No fellowship with Christians at all. When I heard that, Carrie and we went out with Oswald and Angela, Jeff and June and Mark and Janelle. They've got a Kubota side by side, so that was kind of our mode of transportation out there. So we loaded up and went out there, and we sat with Mr. Kabambi. We sang some songs together. His wife, she needs a hip replacement, so he hadn't seen her for 2 months. She was off with family. The way that culture works, they think nothing of just going and living with family for long periods of time. So he was on his own, and his grandkids were feeding him and looking after him. So he was lonely, and we went out. He can hardly see anymore. We went out with our hymn books and sat and read some scriptures with him and sang and had a time of prayer. So that was really special for him, and it's nice to be able to do things like that. This is Mr. Mushinji. He's one of the elders in the local assembly. Pray for him. His wife just passed away a month ago with lung cancer, so she's gone home to be with the Lord now. So we went out, had a word of prayer, and Carrie took some, I think, muffins, maybe, and a shirt for her, and she was just thrilled. There she was, dying, even in this picture here. Her health was failing her, and so it was nice to be able to go out and spend some time with them. Of course, whenever you sit down, always lots of kids, and there's Carrie showing some pictures of what Canada is like, what snow is like. They have no comprehension of cold, having freezing fingers and toes, so just showing what life is like for us back in Canada. This is little Elvis, I'm sorry, Elvis, he's my little buddy. I went out first in 2017, and every year I go back, I look for Elvis. He's in one of the villages that I do some work in, and I just thought I'd show a picture of him. He's my little buddy, so we always spend some time together. Yeah, here's Carrie. We were driving through the village to go out. We had to go out to the bush to look for some trees, for some lumber, and there was groups seated around on the ground. We didn't know what they were doing, and we stopped for a visit, and there she is, this lady with the ball cap on. They're peeling peanuts. So they call them ground nuts, and there she was peeling nuts. So Carrie sat down, and again, they're watching everything you do, and then when they see that you're interested in what they're doing, they love that. So it's nice, any opportunity that you can, to just learn their culture and sit and peel peanuts with them. This is Bright and Sharon and their little guy, Bright Jr. Sharon in the black there, she's one of the nurses, and Bright is one of the doctors, the only doctor actually at Deepalada Mission. And then behind Sharon is Cecilia. She's moved on over to Chitokaloki. And then the girl in the white is Michelle, Bright and Sharon's daughter. So we had them into our home. We wanted to try and have people into our home. It's not typical for missionaries to do that over there. But Beans there in the hospital, they come from Lusaka, so they're very well educated. They're Jehovah's Witnesses. And we had an opportunity to have them in for a meal, sit with them. They got to know us, and they said, "You are the first white people that have ever invited us into their home." So, and I say that they just arrived the day before we did at the mission station. So I know that Jeff and June, Mark and Janelle have had them in their home, but this was the first experience for them. Of course, they're studying us, not sure what they should be doing and how we eat our meals, because it's very different than the way they would. So our daily routines, there's June. She loves going for her walks, her daily walk at 9 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. So whenever Carrie could, she would take June for her walk, and if Carrie couldn't, Jeff would do that. She's all about routine. So they'd go for a walk up by the hospital, and she had this loop that she'd do every day, and the dogs, she's got 2 dogs, and the dogs would follow. So that was something that Carrie was able to do. So we were at Deepalada Mission. Mark and Janelle actually left to go to Lusaka because Janelle was to have her baby, her third. So we were there kind of to help actually with June while they were gone. So the keys were left for the pharmacy with Carrie. A lot of stealing that goes on, even in the hospital and the clinic there with drugs. So Janelle left the keys with Carrie, and Carrie would get the drugs out, whatever they needed for that day, and then the door would get locked back up again. So Carrie had a great opportunity to get to know all the staff up at the hospital and build relationships and friendships with all the staff, which the girls up there just loved Carrie. So it was nice for her to be able to feel a purpose in that way too. This picture's at Chitokaloki. When we switched from Deepalada over to Chit, this was Martha. She was in charge of the food program. At Chitokaloki, they feed all the patients every day. Deepalada, the family has to come and prepare food for whoever, whatever family member that they have in the clinic there. So Carrie helped. That was part of her ministry also, just helping. Wherever you turn, there was just something you can offer, something you could contribute. I mean, what is a missionary anyways? I mean, years ago we used to think the missionary was the one who put the Bible under their arm and out to the bush or out to the jungle they went. You know, missionaries are plumbers, nurses, doctors, mechanics, farmers. I mean, any skill you have, and you don't even have to have a skill. You can just give of yourself and commit to going even on a short-term trip. And that's the other thing I really want to encourage any young people, young or old. I shouldn't say just young people, but short-term mission trips are so important. And just opening your eyes up to the work that's out there, God's calling. We've all been commissioned to go out, right? We've all been commissioned. So it's up to you and I to get off our butts sometime and get going. I mean, not everybody has the ability, not everybody has the finances, but if you're sincere and genuine about wanting to go, God will provide the way. And we've seen that over and over in our lives. I'm not an electrician, okay? I'm a farmer. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, but not an electrician. What do you do when all the missionaries are gone? You're left at the mission station, no electricity, and your solar system decides not to work. What do? And you've got chest freezers full of frozen goods that aren't yours. What do? Get your phone out, get WhatsApp, call an electrician back here in Ontario, Don McKay from Tavistock. Dear brother, he was the one that kind of helped put the solar system together for Jeff, and so there I am, and the timing was perfect. I was able to actually call WhatsApp and get Don on there, and there I am scanning through the room. Well, check that box, and sure enough, and here it was a wire that was shorting out in this little box. I mean, it took Carrie and I like 4 hours in one afternoon to figure this whole thing out, but we got it. The Lord gave us the wisdom, and I didn't get electrocuted. That's good. I'm not a plumber. There's a water line that burst. I mean, thank goodness over in Zambia, their water lines only have to be 12 inches below. It's not like 5 feet down like here in Canada. So it wasn't too hard to figure out where the leak was because it was right in the middle of dry season there. So wherever the wet spot was, yeah, let's dig there. That was easy. So that was an easy fix. Well repairs. So this trip here, we actually I'd have loved to have drilled a well. Carrie's never experienced that before. When you drill a well and you're successful and you put the base in there and you pour the cement around and after it dries and you pump that handle for the first time and the water starts coming out, I'm telling you, there is nothing like it when you've got 50, 60, 80, 100, 200 men, women, and children around you. I mean, I've had women pick me up and carry me around. They're so happy and dancing. I mean, that is quite an experience. I mean, it's one thing to have a bunch of men do that, but women, they were excited. And when Leah, our daughter Leah, and Carrie and I went over, we fixed a well that had been down for almost a year. And that's a story in itself. the village, their pump quit, their well quit working, so there was government workers in the area fixing some government wells at a school, so they asked their workers to come over, and of course they're working. They don't have the tools, and we have a tractor that's out there that we can pull the pipe and the pump and everything up, on a 155-foot well. There's a lot of weight there with pipe and that's full of water and a pump, and so the government workers come in and they're pulling everything up, and they got 3 or 4 lengths off, I think it was. No, sorry, because there was like 60 feet of pipe down in there. Anyways, they got a bunch out, 7 or 8 maybe, and then all of a sudden they're pulling everything up by hand and it slips out of their hands. 155 feet down. How are you going to hook on? Okay, so in each water pipe, it's all galvanized pipe, 10-foot lengths, threaded together, and inside that is your rod that comes up through, and it's a threaded end, and that's the male end. Then you've got the female end that threads on, and that rod is what comes up and is attached to your handle. So as you're pumping, that rod's going up and down inside. That rod's attached to the pump at the bottom. So all I had to try, I come there to just to maintain the well, and they said, "Oh, sir," they said, "the well is broken." I said, "Why? What's wrong?" We had the government come and they were trying to fix the well, and they dropped the pump to the bottom. I said, "What do you mean they dropped it?" Did you get any pipe? "Oh yeah, we got the pipe. It's in our one hut here, in our home." I'm like, well, how do you hook on to a threaded rod, smaller, just a little small, the size of my baby finger? How do you hook onto that with a female end to thread onto that? How are you going to do that? Think about it. What would you do? Pray. Yeah, I did that. I did that, and it didn't work. The first time it didn't work. I'm laying in bed one night, and it was bugging me because I'm thinking, I got to do something for these people. Like, it's a big village too. And they were saying, you got to do something. You got to help us. I said, okay, leave it with me. And so I'm thinking, I got to somehow have a rod that we can lower the rods down and be able to somehow line my female end up with the male and thread that on. So I'm looking around, I'm thinking, okay, pop bottle, but plastic pop bottles, there's Fanta pop bottles out there. So I cut a pop bottle, which, we're talking how big's a pop bottle like that, and your casing is 4-inch casing that I'm going down inside. I'm trying to get this, so Leah was with me and we're lowering it down, and 10 feet, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 feet, and we kind of have an idea where it should be. Do you think that rod's going to be standing straight up? No. So there I am trying to, and I'm doing this, and I said, this is pointless. Yeah, fishing hook, okay. Would that work? Okay. Pulled everything up. Completely discouraged. What are we going to do? I said, God, I don't want, I want to fix this well so that these people can understand that you are God, that you are able. If we put our faith and trust in you, doesn't matter the situation. I said, there's no guarantees. But I said, if God allows this, somehow, some way, I want you to give him the glory, not me. I'm just the hands. So I went home completely frustrated. Leah and I were sitting there trying to figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to retrieve this. And so I was laying in bed. I woke up at 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. So on the bottom of the casing, when we're putting the casing down in the hole that we've drilled, on the very bottom, there's a cone that threads on. So I thought, I got to get a bigger funnel. I've got to be able to have something that just fits inside the 4-inch casing. So that's what I did. I got a cone, and I cut it off exactly what I needed to be able to just slide down inside. And on the top end of the cone, I drilled the hole out so I could get my rod, the female end, through, welded a washer on the bottom side and a washer on the top side so that the cone couldn't come off. I'm all excited. Here we go. This is the day. We go out with the tractor and my little Jimmy rig, contraption that I didn't know if it was going to work or not. And sure enough, we go there, down 10 feet. And of course, now you got more people gathered around. Everybody's like, Dave's going to fix the well. He's going to fix the well. Don't say that yet. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Oh, okay, I said, we've hit something. So we started to turn the rod slowly, and it stopped. I pulled up, I thought, we're on it, but I can't pull it up. So we had the tractor there, hooked that rod on with a chain, some vice grips, and up we come. 10 feet, 20, 30, we're taking it all apart as we come up, and we got it. How was that possible? Well, I'm telling you, those people were excited. I said, don't get too excited because I haven't got to put it back down yet. We don't know what can fit, so many things. We've had the craziest things happen before. We're having a real problem with the quality of the well pipe that we're putting down. It's galvanized pipe, which comes out of India. Really poor quality. And we're actually having some of the threads rusting on us. And if the threads give way, everything drops to the bottom. I've retrieved 4 pumps now this way. So it's amazing that God gave me the insight and the knowledge to know how to do this. But anyways, we're trying to. I'd really like to try and get stainless steel pipe because with stainless steel, excuse me, it won't rust. So, anyways, we put everything back together, and we start pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping, and all of a sudden, this dirty water comes out. We took the pump apart and cleaned it all up, put it back down, and those ladies I've never seen. They grabbed me, they grabbed Leah, and they're dancing, they're just going around in this big line, and Leah's looking at me, she's yelling, she's, Dad, what do I do? I said, just enjoy it. It was quite an experience. Anyway, sorry, that's just one of the stories. I mean, it's not us. Excuse me, it's what God's doing in us and how he uses us. Sorry, excuse me. We just have to be the tool. We have to be willing to go. Like I said, I'm just a farmer. I'm not a well driller. Neither is Dad. He's learning. I'm learning, and we just take our skills, what God has given us, to be able to try and figure out how we can serve these people and ultimately share the gospel. So here we are. That's a pump actually on the bottom of the pipe. That's one of the pipes, or you can see the size of the pipe there and the pump on the bottom. This one here, we were just replacing some of the rubbers on the inside. This was actually one of the wells at the leper colony in Chitokaloki. Of course, when you get water running after putting a pump back together, everybody's so excited. The kids come rushing in and they got to wash their hands and bathe and everything underneath the tap. It's just so exciting to see. So everybody's excited. The women, everybody gathers around. They're just so happy. And you would be happy too if you had to go down to fetch water and face these critters every day. I was there in 2019, my second last day out there, that trip. There was a 14-year-old girl taken by a croc. So it's every day. It's common. I mean, they would look at you and I getting in a vehicle, driving down the 401 at 120 or 130 kilometers, and you guys are nuts. Yeah, but that's what we got to do to get to work every day. That's what they have to do to survive and have water every day. Is there a need? It's a real need. Sometimes it's life or death, out there. It's the way they live. So that one there was actually shot in the river right outside the house that we stay in at Deepalada. The Jesus film. This was one of the big things that Carrie and I really, really wanted to do in our ministry out there this time. Renew Outreach is a company in Atlanta. They put these backpacks together with a film a projector. You plug a SD or USB in the side. There's solar panel there for recharging the battery. It's got a speaker there. You can get one that's good for up to 200 people, 500 people, or 1,000. So we went in the middle. We figured, okay, let's be safe. Let's get one for 500 people. The average size of a village, I thought that would probably be big enough. So my ways, or sorry, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. And this is one verse we had to keep at the forefront of our minds. This trip here, we thought we knew what we were going to be doing when we went out there on this trip. God flipped it right around, and we had to really get to the point where we understood His will, His purpose, and His timing. We can go out there with our thoughts and intentions and motives, thinking that we're going to do a great work. We have in our minds what we want to do. But you have to remember, for us going out there short term, we have the luxury of coming back home again. And sometimes you got to be mindful that the missionaries might have to clean up a mess that you make. Well, you would say, well, it's a Jesus film. How could that be bad? In everything we do, we have to be mindful, because you don't want to create issues. In this culture, they've never seen, a lot, I should say most of the people in the villages around us out there have never seen the Jesus film. Would have never seen the crucifixion scene before. So this was new. So we went to Jeff. We asked him if he was okay with us showing the Jesus film, and he said, let me pray about it. And a couple weeks later, he said, well, you should talk to the elders in the assembly, which we did. We went to them first and asked them, and they were thrilled. They were like, yep, you can go out. We would love to see that happen here, but you have to start here. This is Jerusalem. The gospel went out from Jerusalem, didn't it? Okay, sure. So that's what we did. We started in the assembly, and then we started at the farthest away village that we drilled a well at. And again, that got because we had drilled a well there, the people knew us, they accepted us, and that was our way in to be able to show the Jesus film. So here, the first time out with the backpack, and this is a video that I want to show you. Just pause it for 1 sec. I just want to explain it. So this is Carrie and I and Oswald and Angela. We went out to the village. Salingenya was the name of the village. We picked up the headman, not literally, but we picked him up and had him come with us, and in the back of the Kubota. And here we are driving through the village, and he's yelling, because all the homes are along the side of the road. He's yelling to everybody that the missionaries are here to show the Jesus film tonight. And then you'll see the reaction of the people. Now, a lot of the women were in the fields. The women in that culture do the majority of the work. So a lot of the women were actually out and not present. But you'll kind of get a feel for the excitement. So, okay. Doing her laundry. Anyways, that gives you an idea of every village that we go to. It's funny, as we went from one village to the next, you're seeing some who were hearing, oh, the missionaries are bringing the Jesus film. So they would sneak into that village early because there was so much anticipation. They were really looking forward to it. Okay, so here we are setting up. That was a 92-inch screen, a collapsible fold-up screen, which we'd tie to a tree and a pole, and we'd have to wait till it's dark. The men were all there. The women were still coming in from the fields doing their work. So here, I wish you could see this. This picture was just fabulous. This was at Chitokaloki. You can see the stars in the background. It was just the Milky Way that night. The stars were just blazing and bright. It was beautiful with that grass hut in the back. It was just such a beautiful night to be able to show this, and it was a neat experience. This was probably the largest crowd we had. I'm going to say I counted roughly 600-700 people here, men, women, and children. And the neat thing with that screen is that you project it on, you can actually see it from the backside too. So we had them sitting on both sides. That was pretty neat. There we are. So the one thing we did figure out is the crucifixion scene. After the crucifixion scene, we had to stop. If we were going to share the gospel with the people, we had to do it in the middle of the movie. Otherwise, after it's done, everybody's up and gone, because we're interrupting their supper time. Okay, typically they're eating just as it's getting dark. The women will start cooking meals after they come in from the fields. So we had to be mindful of that. So we just give a short little 10-minute gospel message in there. They also, at the very end of the film, they also show the gospel too. So ministry opportunities, kids Bible study. This group of kids played in behind our house every day, and it was neat because their English actually was fairly good. And I'd go out and play with them, and they asked me if I'd do a Bible study with them. So that was kind of a neat opportunity. You don't get too many, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids coming to you and saying, oh, hey, will you do a Bible study with us? And I mean, they were serious. They were genuine too. So that was pretty neat. I was playing some games with them the one day. Chris and Allison Brundage. Chris is the pilot at Chitokaloki, and him and his wife Allison have a great ministry in schools out there. They'll drive out half, three-quarters an hour into the bush, and they do a kids ministry for 1 hour, and very prompt. They start and they finish within 1 hour. It doesn't drag on. They do Bible memorization, they sing songs, and they tell a Bible story, and they give points with little prizes. It's huge. You'll get a huge crowd of kids out. This was another video. So this one here gives you a kind of an idea of the excitement that these kids have for this class. I mean, just imagine if you could get this kind of thing going in our school system. Think we could ever get that excited in our school system here to sing about Jesus? Over there, the kids love it. There's such huge opportunities over there to work with the children. I think that's one thing that Carrie and I would really like to do also next time we're there. This is we can skip the next one also, just because of time. Sorry, you can skip. Oh, sorry, Keith and Gail Bailey. Keith's doing a great work out there. He goes to a school at the what used to be a leper colony, and I went out with Keith one day to that school, and it was just so exciting to see his excitement for his age. He's jumping and playing around. I mean, it was great just to see his enthusiasm, and again, doing a great work with the kids there. Learning how to cook in Shima, and Shima is their staple food. It's corn, which is pounded into a fine flour, like really, really fine, and it's their staple food that they eat two times a day. So Carrie had the privilege of going into one of the ladies' homes and learning how to cook in Shima, and the lady just loved having, being able to teach us something. There's a sense of pride in that, and I think that really, it just does something for them, because they look at us with white skin and they say, you people have everything, but when you get down to on the ground with them and see how they make their grass mats and their tools that they make, it's just amazing. They love that stuff. So here is a set of twins that were born at Deepalada Mission. This mom, she had been there for 2 months. They make sure that the twins are big enough to be able to make it on their own with mom at home. So Carrie made a cake for her and all the staff, and they came around. That was a big thing for everybody to come around and enjoy that. Just to show love for this mom. It's being away from your home and your family for 2 months is a long time in a hospital. This was another ministry that Carrie kind of started near the end. These are all widows. The widows a lot of times are outcast in their villages, and those are little homes in the background there, just a small little 8x10 size home that each woman would have. And Carrie went out and took some cold water and a shirt for each of the ladies, and she'd hold the shirt up to see, it looks like it would fit you, and and she'd go around, and she just sat. She couldn't speak Lunda. They couldn't speak English. But the one lady, it was neat, Carrie was telling me, she said she pointed up to heaven. It was like she was thanking God. Sorry. Thanking God for this missionary lady. It's showing the love of Christ however we can. 1 cup of water, 1 shirt, nothing much. We all have neighbors in need, right? We all have people in need. I always had opportunity to sit and talk with young guys. These guys here, I don't know if they're believers, but they talk openly about the Lord and just trying to pour into their lives. Had the opportunity to speak once, well, not just one Sunday, but I'm not a gifted speaker, but the Lord gives me help, and I'm able to share the word there also. Farming God's Way is a big part of my life with agriculture, I guess, in my background. Farming God's Way is an organization that started in Zimbabwe to help the people come up out of, really to lift them up out of poverty. And it's done through conservation agriculture, and I would love to be able to go over there and learn. There's biblical principles and guidelines that you can actually use through farming and teaching these people how to farm the way God intended. I mean, the way we farm here in North America, tilling our soil, turning it over, we beat it with all of our equipment. God did not intend for us to farm that way. He didn't intend for us to farm using chemicals to kill weeds and everything. We use God's blanket. If you go to the bush, any of these forests around here, how does it work? How does a seed germinate, and how do they keep living and surviving and coming up through it? He has a blanket of leaves and grass, and that's. Anyways, I won't get into it all. That's something that's dear to my heart, and I'm thinking I would love to go back and work. There's a ministry all in itself. So the principles behind Farming God's Way, everything with God has to be done on time. He has a standard. It's supposed to be done to a high standard. It's supposed to be done with minimal wastage, and fourthly, done with joy. So all these opportunities we can have to teach. Biblical keys behind Farming God's Way: acknowledge God and God alone. Consider your ways before God. Understanding God's all-sufficiency. What you sow, you will reap. And bring the tithes and offerings to God. These are all keys that you can pour into these people and help them as you teach them how to grow. I mean, they can grow food. I mean, they can grow really good food. But there's ways that we can actually help improve their yields. Just because they don't know, and because their ancestors have taught them, it's passed from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, and they burn everything. In dry season, the whole country's on fire, like even in the bush. As we were flying in, we couldn't see because they burn everything. Everything, all the tall elephant grass that's 8-10 feet tall, it's all on fire. The whole country's on fire. And I mean, there's snakes in the grass, and rats and mice, which you can eat, right? That's a meal. So it's easier to catch them if they don't have to run through the grass. Manure. Here I was able to find some manure from an ox pen. They bring their oxen in at the end of the day, and they're in about a 20 by 20 foot pen, crowded all tight in there, and the manure gets this deep. It's hard. It's all hard manure. And I said, what do you do with that manure? Oh, nothing. We just move the pen over here when it gets too deep. I said, you don't do nothing with the manure? No. I said, you should be using it in your gardens, in your fields. So you got to teach them these things, you know. So I was able to get some that we could take to the mission and use for the vegetables there. George Kenzie Mana. This is quite a story. George, this was our second Sunday, I believe, at Deepalada. In the gospel hall there, all the men are on one side and the women are on the other side, and the breaking of bread service then where the missionaries are sitting up along the side, and so we're sitting, and then after the close of the service, Mr. Mushinji gets up, gives the announcements, and then he asks George to stand up. I've never met George before until this time. He stands up at the back, and he's talking for like 10 minutes. Just kind of a sad, long face, but he's talking and talking and talking. In Lunda, we couldn't understand him. And he sits down, and then Mushinji, he looks over at us missionaries, and he begins to tell us. He says, George just came back to the Lord. He was away from the Lord for, I can't remember how many years, for a long time. He spoke down on the assembly. He criticized the assembly, spoke bad about the elders and all the Christians. He was a drunk. He was a womanizer. He was bad. Anyways, the Lord convicted him. And this Sunday, he was before the whole assembly. He told everybody what he was guilty of, the sins that he had committed. And then he was repenting. He had talked to the Lord, and he had confessed his sin, and he wanted back into fellowship. How often does that happen? So it was neat. After that explanation, we understood. I'm sitting, and I see my wife pull a Kleenex out, and she's wiping tears coming down her face, I could see, and it was really touching, very moving. I mean, here you have a brother in Christ who has come back. We hear about angels rejoicing when someone comes to Christ, but what about someone who comes back to Christ? So the women all get up, and they leave. June and Carrie are the last behind all the ladies as they exit. The men, they stay seating until all the women are outside. And Carrie, she goes over to George. He's sitting in his chair. She leans over top of him and just embraces him and holds him. And the tears are coming down her eyes. And the men all turn around and they see Carrie do this. I'm like, what are you doing? This is not their culture. You don't do that. But she did what the Holy Spirit told her to do. And in that culture, women don't hug men like that. She left, she went outside. Mushinji gets up out of his chair, goes back, throws his arms around George. You don't see that in that culture. But the barrier was broken. He understood. I mean, and it's funny because we heard later, it was because of what Miss Carrie had done that started to speak to their hearts. The missionary is doing this. It was an amazing opportunity to see God at work. And we weren't trying, we were trying to be careful not to do the wrong thing. And here God took something like this to start to break down barriers. Romans 10:14, but how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? How can they believe in him if they have never heard? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? We all have a mission. We're not all called to go to Zambia or Bangladesh or India or Brazil. We have that in our own backyard. Some of us feel led and called to do that. And that's where Carrie and I are at right now. We were able to go down last week down to MOP, which is a missions orientation program. And Letitia, we went down together with them. We were able to take that weekend. We're not sure where God's leading us. We feel the Lord calling us back there. Lord willing, we'd like to go back September, October. We want to do some language study. We want to get a grasp for the Lunda language. My desire is not to go and be a maintenance man on any of the mission stations. I have a heart for the people. I want to be out living with them if there's any possible way. I don't know. We're just trusting the Lord to show us and give us his direction as we follow his leading and guiding. This is a video that we put together, just kind of sums up our whole trip. We do appreciate your patience, and I know I'm over time, but thank you again for this opportunity for us to share about our work, not our work, I'm sorry, the Lord's work and what the Lord's doing in us out there. It's a big work. Please, I shouldn't have said that. Our work, it's not ours, it's God's. It's God's work, and we feel blessed and privileged to be able to go out and serve in this fashion through wells, through farming, whatever skills we have, we can be used. So just enjoy the video.
use our ability